My boyfriend proposed to me just to make his crush jealous. In front of everyone's eyes. I smiled and stretched out my hand, letting him slide the ring onto my finger. The size didn't fit. A few days later, I heard him venting in a bar. The man downed a glass of strong liquor in one gulp, with teary eyes. He complained, "I did so much for her, but she still prefers that scumbag. Rachel, what are you doing?" He lifted his tear-filled eyes at me, clearly dissatisfied, feeling guilty. I quickly flipped my phone over, not daring to tell him. My crush had just sent me a message. "There's a puppy at home that can do a backflip. Want to come and see?" Chapter 1. The air in the private booth froze for a second, and all eyes turned toward me. They circled around me and Santiago. I looked at the young man half kneeling in front of me, utterly speechless. My gaze at him was filled with confusion. Santiago knelt there, dazzling lights casting ambiguous shadows across his face. The ring inside the jewelry box sparkled under the light. I lowered my eyes slightly, meeting his somewhat wounded look. His eyes were practically begging, "Please, just say yes." I could already guess, he must have hit another wall with Patricia. Protecting the boyfriend's dignity was an unshirkable duty. I looked at Santiago, dramatically covering my mouth with a gasp, tears brimming at the corners of my eyes. Overwhelmed with emotion, choking back my voice, I said, "I do." The crowd erupted into loud cheers. Santiago slipped the ring onto my left middle finger. As expected, it got stuck. Patricia was the type of slender, melancholic beauty, with thin fingers. I glanced at the crowd. Our eyes met, hers dropped instantly. As if burned, she lowered her head, hiding the disbelief in her eyes, and a glimmer of tears. Chapter 2. Around the corner of the corridor, I twisted Santiago's waist hard with my hand. "Ow, ow, ow." The young man yelped, but obediently didn't resist. I hissed at him, "Are you fucking crazy?" Santiago lowered his eyes, leaning close to whisper in my ear. Her ring was lost by that scumbag. I wanted to give her one, I already had it in my hand. But suddenly she said that scumbag bought her a new one, and even asked why I had her ring. What's so good about that scumbag anyway? Santiago frowned, his fine brows knitted in pure disgust. I just couldn't swallow it. To save face, I had no choice but to say I was proposing to you. I stomped hard on his foot, just as Santiago was about to cry out. His gaze landed ahead, and his body froze. "Santiago." Patricia's voice was soft, like a murmuring stream, but it gave me goosebumps. "I'll head back first." Before Santiago could finish, I wrapped my arms around his waist. His body stiffened. I whined. "I already said yes to your proposal. Stay with me a little longer today." Santiago lowered his head, utterly baffled. I rose on my toes and whispered, "Hold on, make her jealous." He lowered his head, the corner of his lips curling into a smile, sliding an arm around my waist. He went along with it. "All right, then I won't walk her back." I buried my head into his chest, about to keep acting spoiled, when Patricia's voice came again. I can't get a cab now. It's too far." "It's fine. I'll just take the bus home." "I'll take you," Santiago replied without hesitation. He pulled me off him and hurried toward Patricia. "It's too late." "But what about your girlfriend?" Santiago glanced back at me, waving apologetically. "It's fine. Her friend will come for her." I flipped him off, mouthing each word clearly. "Fuck you, simp." Chapter 3. Yes, Santiago and I are not really boyfriend and girlfriend. He has a crush. The crush is beautiful, melancholic, an unreachable white magnolia blooming high on the branch. Santiago jumped under the tree for half a day, but in the end, she was picked by a jerk who carried a ladder. Later, when the jerk's true nature was exposed, Santiago immediately turned into a simp again, and I was just a part of the play between his crush and his simp role. One time, Patricia hurt him again, and I happened to be the unlucky one chosen from the pile. I was in a bar when he poured out his heart to me, complaining about his lovesickness. The young man's bangs drooped down, half covering his eyes. Under the dim light, his eyes reddened, watery like a puppy's, shimmering with self-pity as he muttered, "Why don't you be my girlfriend? Not the real kind. I just want to piss her off." To tell her I won't always be waiting behind her. Okay. I swallowed the wine in my mouth and lifted my eyelids to look at him. I said, okay. Really? My gaze stopped at the corner of his reddened eyes. And suddenly I smiled. Really? Maybe. Through Santiago. I saw myself, the 18-year-old girl who drank for courage to confess, filled with reckless bravery, but all she got was the man's evasive expression and a helpless smile tugging at his lips. It was finding out, only at the last moment before his flight took off, that he was leaving. It was crying hoarsely on the roadside, chasing the departing plane. I begged him not to leave. I will never say I like you again. Stay, will you? Rachel. The young man's voice was warm, but his tone was firm. He said, take good care of yourself. Chapter 4. By the time my best friend Gloria came to pick me up, half an hour had passed. I got into the passenger seat and showed her the ring stuck at the middle of my knuckle. Her jaw dropped. You got engaged? With Santiago? No way. I nodded. He proposed. Patricia was watching, so I said yes. Gloria was speechless, pulled out her phone, and snapped a picture of my hand. What are you doing? Posting it on my moments. She lowered her head, typing quickly, my good friend got proposed to. I'll celebrate it too. Come on. I rolled my eyes at her and lowered the car window. The night wind brushed against my face, filled with coolness. She pretended to be casual. Do you still like Ryan? The wind blew my hair into a mess, bangs covering my eyes. I froze for a moment. It's been 3 years, I said. The first year after he left, I was unconvinced. I went to his university, chose his major, and swore I would be the best. When he came back, he'd see how excellent I had become and beg me tearfully to come back to him. The second year, academic grind left me haggard, but I held those titles proudly. Yet all I ever got were my teacher's praise and soft sighs. You're really impressive. But, compared to your senior, you're still a little behind. Which senior? Ryan. Have you heard of him? The third year. I realized that no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't even hold on to the corner of his coat. The night I gave up, I saw a photo posted by his friend. The young man was wearing a black coat, tall and straight, smiling with a glass of champagne in hand. Beside him stood a woman, her long dress sweeping the floor, graceful and elegant. They matched well. I finally realized I couldn't catch up to him. Maybe, I blinked, I don't like him anymore. Rather than liking, it's more like worshipping someone out of reach. Gloria responded softly. Then what if he comes back to the country? How could he suddenly come back? My words were cut short by the ding of a notification. The once-pinned chat popped up with a red dot. Rachel, I'm coming back tomorrow. Chapter 5. The next morning, I stood at the airport entrance, staring at my reflection in the glass door. My makeup was flawless, my clothes neat. I slapped myself hard, cursing. Rachel, oh Rachel, are you going to become a simp like Santiago? Simping never ends well. Please, turn back now. Rachel, a voice both strange and familiar. My body stiffened. When I turned, I saw the man I hadn't seen in 3 years standing behind me. Tall and slender, his phoenix eyes lowered slightly, smiling as he called my name, like the spring breeze melting the last of the snow. He said, long time no see. I pressed my lips together, holding back the sting rising in my chest. Like a mature adult, I smiled back and nodded. I said, Uncle, long time no see. Chapter 6. Yes, I fell in love with my uncle, but Rachel, am a proper person. I don't do forbidden love. Ryan and I are not related by blood at all. He is the son of my grandfather's sworn brother, only 4 or 5 years older than me. Actually, he's more like an older brother. My parents were always busy, so since I was little, they left me at Ryan's house, and I grew up with him, falling for a handsome, smart, cold to outsiders but gentle to me brother-like figure was the most natural thing in the world. Childhood sweethearts, innocent playmates. Unfortunately, he wasn't interested in me. The result of growing up together is that even if my confession got rejected, we still had to go home and eat dinner together. Tears flowed in my heart as I pressed myself against the car door. Ryan tilted his head to look at me, smiling indulgently. Rachel, is the view outside the window that beautiful? The undeveloped outskirts were desolate and empty. I forced myself. Beautiful. He chuckled, cleared his throat softly. There are many sharp curves on the overpass here. You should. As if to prove his words true, the driver jerked the wheel hard, under the pull of centrifugal force. I rolled uncontrollably toward his side, straight into an embrace laced with the faint, cool scent of wood. My heartbeat skipped. Ryan lowered his gaze, long lashes casting shadows across his face. Our eyes met. His eyes were like misty deep waters, unfathomable, unclear. I shot up like a spring, and smacked my head on the car roof. Sorry. Almost bit my own tongue. I tried to shrink into the opposite corner. I felt Ryan's gaze fall on my back. I stared stubbornly out the window, but what I heard was a lonely sigh. Since Rachel has a boyfriend now, does that mean you have to keep your distance from me? Of course. Isn't keeping a distance from other men what you should do when you have a boyfriend? Besides, weren't you the one who rejected me? I swallowed back the retorts in my heart. The glass of the window reflected half his profile, like the moon in water. Hazy, fragile. Fine then. I couldn't bear to make a beauty sad. Rachel, you hopeless facecon. Cursing myself, I spoke with pain. No, even if I have a boyfriend, Uncle is still very important. Really? I said. Really. Chapter 7. Fake. After finally surviving the family dinner with Ryan at the old house, I hurried to excuse myself. Ryan propped his chin on his hand, phoenix eyes half-lidded as he looked up at me. He'd been in a high position too long. His gaze sharp and cold, except when he looked at me. Then it softened. His eyes made me uncomfortable, so I slipped on my coat. Then I'll head out first. His fingers tapped lightly on the wooden table. I'll take you. No need. I rushed out. I just wanted to run, afraid that if I stayed a bit longer, I'd fall for him all over again. Stop it. Don't become a simp. Rachel. Santiago had rented an apartment near campus, which counted as my payment for being his girlfriend. He rarely stayed there. Usually it was me and my cat. But today, he happened to be home. The taxi stopped at the entrance of the complex. I ran into Santiago at the gate. Why did you come down? He glanced at me. You said you were coming, so I came to pick you up. How sweet. I covered my mouth and pretended to be moved. Yeah. His face was unreadable. Too bad no matter what I do, I can't move her. Not in the mood to argue. I rolled my eyes. Do you like her that much? Yeah. Santiago tilted his head slightly, his profile sharp. The wind lifted the strands of hair on his forehead. The warm yellow streetlight shone on his face, yet somehow made him look lonely. But she doesn't like me. I'm a bit tired. Rachel. He suddenly stopped, turned back to look at me. What if I liked you instead? My steps froze. I reached out and covered Santiago's mouth. Enough. Stop it. You could never like me. Santiago jumped with anger. Why are you so boring? Shouldn't you say a few comforting words at a time like this? I lowered my head, eyes on my heart, as if I were advising him, and also myself. You are the most important. If there's no response, then stop liking someone. I patted his shoulder. Otherwise, the only one suffering is yourself. Chapter 8. I took a shower when I got home. When I came out, I saw Santiago sitting on the couch playing with my cat, Flan. Seeing me, he pointed at my phone. Someone just called you. Who? I asked casually. I think your note said Uncle. My heart immediately went on high alert. What did you say to him? He asked what you were doing, and I said you were in the shower. Your uncle sounds pretty young. I nearly passed out, but thinking about it, what he said wasn't wrong. And then? Then he hung up. Santiago looked at me innocently. What's wrong? Your uncle doesn't know you're dating? I pursed my lips. He knows. It's just, I don't want to constantly remind him that I'm in a relationship. What are you afraid of then? Yeah, what am I afraid of? I sighed and pointed toward the guest room. You said last time that your pajamas were itchy, so I bought you a new pair. They're clean and on the nightstand. Santiago's eyes lit up. Rachel, you're so good to me. I crossed my arms and looked at him, both of us speaking at the same time. If only she were this good to me too. Santiago shut his mouth. I rolled my eyes. Go take a shower. Santiago obediently took the pajamas and went into the bathroom. Flan curled up on my lap. I reached out to stroke his soft fur. For once, he didn't meow. My phone screen stayed on the recent calls page. I hesitated whether to call back. Forget it. I sighed and turned off the screen, tossing it aside. Santiago is a simp, and I'm a clown. In a way, we really are a match. A loser combo. Chapter 9. 10 minutes later, Santiago shouted from the bathroom. Rachel, Rachel, bring me a towel for my hair. It's on the balcony. I placed Flan on the couch and grabbed the towel from the balcony, twisting the doorknob. I handed it over. Here. The bathroom was filled with steam, blurring my vision. A puddle of water sent me slipping. An arm wrapped around my waist. Santiago, wearing only a towel around his waist, stood bare-chested in the mist, water droplets sliding down the lines of his torso. Our skin touched. His body was warm from the shower. His arm tightened around my waist, his breath fanning across my face as he lowered his head. How could you be so careless? Our eyes met. The air heated. I sharply sensed the awkward tension starting to spread. Quickly, I slapped the towel over his face. You splashed water everywhere. Mop the floor later. Santiago's face was covered by the towel. He let go of my waist and started drying his hair, revealing half his face, flushed pink from the steam. Handsome. Plenty of girls like Santiago. Too bad he's a simp. Got it. His voice was muffled. The phone in his pajama pocket suddenly rang, cutting him off. I answered, but the water on my hand accidentally hit the speakerphone. Auntie Lou from the old house's voice echoed in the cramped bathroom. Miss, Sir has a fever. Come back quickly. Sir? Did she mean Ryan? Why did this suddenly sound like a CEO romance cliché? Confused, I asked, Uncle has a fever? Call a doctor then. I can't cure him. Auntie Lou choked. Miss. She didn't finish before Santiago gave me a disapproving look. You're too cold-blooded. Rachel, your uncle's sick and you're not going back to check on him? Huh? I looked bewildered. What's it got to do with you? Santiago frowned. Righteous and serious, maintaining family bonds is important. I frowned, but, all right. No buts. He cut in decisively. I'll drive you back. The call was hung up. Santiago winked. How did I do in front of your uncle? Did I look like a responsible boyfriend? I held my forehead, just when I finally escaped from Ryan's side. Now Santiago's sending me right back. Chapter 10. When I arrived at the old house, the lights on the second floor were blazing. How did he suddenly get a fever? I asked Auntie Lou. He had been perfectly fine before I left. It hadn't even been 4 hours since I left, and he was already running a fever. Auntie Lou's eyes darted around, avoiding mine. I stepped into the bedroom. Ryan was lying on the bed, his pale face flushed with fever. I reached out and pressed my hand against his forehead. His hair was still dripping water, yet his forehead was burning hot. Has the doctor been here? Yes, he has. Sir has taken the medicine and just needs good rest. I frowned. Auntie Lou, why did you suddenly call me Miss? And call my uncle Sir? Didn't you always just use nicknames before? Auntie Lou coughed awkwardly and said, I've been reading too many CEO romance novels lately. All right. I don't understand, but I respect it. The hand on his forehead was suddenly caught. The excessive heat sent a shiver through me. Instinctively, I tried to pull my hand away, but his grip only tightened. Rachel. Ryan's voice was hoarse, his eyes full of watery light. My gaze darted away, too flustered to meet his. Auntie Lou had already left the room, even kindly closing the door behind her. I swallowed. Uncle, let go first. No. He looked at me, stubborn like a spoiled child. If I let go, Rachel will run off to her boyfriend. So, when sick, even the strongest adults turn into children. My heart softened. I'm not going anywhere. I'll stay with you. His hand squeezed mine twice. I looked into those fever-glazed eyes. The man who was usually so cold was muddled by the fever, clingy and spoiled. Who could resist that? Forget it, if this makes me a simp. Then so be it. He's this good-looking. What's wrong with simping a little? Resigned, I leaned back against the chair. Sleep. I'll be right here with you. Chapter 11. Sleeping in a chair wasn't comfortable. When I woke up, I checked my phone. It had only been an hour and a half. There were several missed calls from Santiago. My hand was gripped tightly. It took effort to pry it free from Ryan's. I stepped outside the room to call Santiago back. Auntie Lou and the others were already asleep. The old house was suddenly very quiet. I stood at the second-floor staircase, dialing. Santiago's voice was urgent. Rachel, Flan suddenly threw up tonight. I took him to the hospital. I called but you didn't answer. Is it serious? I'll come over now. I started down the stairs at once. Send me your location. It's fine. I've got it. Santiago lowered his voice, trying to comfort me. The doctor said it's nothing serious. Just in 4 drip. I'll stay with him. You need to stay with your uncle anyway. I'll be here. I pressed my lips together, feeling somewhat relieved. All right. I'll come back first thing in the morning. Thank you. Flan suddenly meowed weakly on the other end. My heart ached, baby. But then, suddenly, a scorching wall pressed against my back. Every hair on my body stood on end. A man's chin rested on my shoulder, an arm circling my waist, pulling me into his embrace, like falling into a cloud of burning heat. Even my own body felt like it was about to ignite. Rachel. His voice was hoarse, his breath hot against my ear. Who are you talking to? It felt like I'd just been caught cheating. I instinctively hung up the phone. No one. I tried to pull away. Uncle, why are you up? You should go back to bed and rest. But the arm around my waist tightened. He lowered his head, his lips brushing faintly against the back of my neck. The skin there was especially sensitive, seared by his feverish lips. My whole body stiffened. Rachel. I woke up and saw you weren't by my side. Don't lie to me. Rachel. My legs felt weak. His fingers brushed away the hair at the nape of my neck. Didn't you promise to stay with me? Between me and him, his hot breath lingered. Who's more important? Too close, too ambiguous. I fought to steady my trembling body. It's just, he's sick. He'll probably forget everything tomorrow morning. Just calm the patient down. I swallowed hard and forced myself to say, Uncle is more important. In the darkness, his low laugh sounded seductive and dangerous. Chapter 12. I stayed stiff in Ryan's arms until midnight. Finally, I drifted into a heavy sleep. In a strange, kaleidoscopic dream, I saw Ryan in high school. His brows and eyes were still a little youthful, wearing a school uniform, gaze falling coldly on the girl in front of him. His tone indifferent. Sorry, I'm not planning on dating. I stood in the corner, watching the girl get rejected. Yet in my heart, I felt a strange sense of relief. After she left, I appeared with my backpack. Ryan. The boy's eyes softened the moment they landed on me, the snow atop the mountain melting in an instant. His brows and gaze softened as he called my name, Rachel. Ryan took my backpack, reached out to ruffle my hair. Let's go home. I blinked and followed beside him, basking in a kind of treatment different from everyone else's. In so many moments, I always believed I was different, until my 18th birthday, when with the courage of alcohol, I revealed the girlish secret I had kept for years, my heart overflowing with tenderness. Under the moonlight, Ryan, 23, sat on the sofa, silver moonlight draping a soft veil over him. He raised a hand to rub his brow. The look in his eyes, however, was full of helplessness and indulgence. He said, Rachel, you're drunk. You're not clear-headed. I'll pretend I didn't hear this. Go to bed. I said, I'm very clear-headed. The young man raised his eyes, his gaze dark, but it flickered and disappeared in an instant. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they were clear. You're still young. You can't tell the difference between dependence and love. I can. I was already an adult. I knew the difference between liking and dependence. I wanted to say it, but when I met his eyes, those words turned into ashes. clogging my throat. The young man's gaze rested gently on me as he said, "Go to sleep." I would rather he had a cold face, bluntly telling me he wasn't interested. My lowered hands clenched into fists, nails digging into flesh, and I couldn't tell if I trembled from shameful unwillingness or from pain. Only, what I couldn't stand most was letting him look down on my feelings. Chapter 13. The next morning, I woke still tightly wrapped in his arms. I touched Ryan's forehead and confirmed his fever had lessened. Carefully, bit by bit, I slid out of his hold. On my way downstairs, I ran into Auntie Lou, who hurriedly called out, "Rachel, miss, when Sir wakes up, have breakfast together." I paused, then said, "No." The taxi dropped me at the pet hospital Santiago had sent me. Morning mist lingered in the air. I pushed the door open and saw Santiago dozing on the bench, the tall young man's long legs stretched out, dark circles obvious under his eyes. He looked a bit pitiful. The doctor led me to Flan's cage. The little white cat was curled into a ball, fast asleep. "The condition has stabilized. Last night your boyfriend brought it in and stayed here all night for the 4-drip. After making sure Flan was fine, I finally sighed in relief. Santiago. I stood in front of him and called his name softly. His long lashes trembled. "Go back and sleep in bed." Santiago half opened his eyes, looked at me, and suddenly grabbed my wrist. "Rachel." The rising tone sounded like a spoiled plea. "Sit next to me." I didn't understand, but I sat down anyway. Santiago tilted his head, heavy against my shoulder. The scent of orange blossom filled my nose. I shifted uncomfortably, but he held my wrist tightly, with a sleepy nasal voice. "Don't move, too tired. Let me sleep a bit." Normally, I would have gotten up right away, killing every ambiguous gesture in its cradle. But in this moment, looking at Flan fast asleep in the cage opposite, if I got up now, my conscience would ache a little. Fine. I closed my eyes, deciding to endure it. Chapter 14. When I woke up again, I was already at home. Coming out of the room, I saw a spirited Santiago pacing around the living room. When he saw me, his eyes lit up. "You're awake. I bought you breakfast. It's on the table." I nodded. "Thank you for taking care of Flan." "No need to thank me." Santiago smiled, his eyes curved like crescent moons. "Pure, harmless, but if you really want to thank me, come with me tonight to Patricia's birthday party." I almost wanted to hit him, but I held back. Santiago pounced, wagging his imaginary tail pitifully. "Rachel, Rachel, I know you're the best." She wanted to spend her birthday with that jerk, but he said he wasn't free, so I called a few friends to celebrate with her. "Make up the numbers. You come with me." I held back again. I sat at the dining table, eating the breakfast he bought, all the things I liked. "Fine." My heart softened. "But I still want to remind you of something. The more you cling desperately, the less others will cherish you. When you treat her too well, her threshold rises. She'll take everything you do for granted, and she won't value it. I knew you treat me the best." Santiago's eyes curved, smiling like a puppy, two sharp canines showing. "Don't worry. I know what I'm doing." Chapter 15. Like hell he does. I stood in the glittering venue, staring speechlessly at a champagne tower over 10 levels tall. The phone in my bag buzzed. I lowered my head and saw a message from Ryan. "Rachel, will you come over tonight?" The cunning man didn't send it on WeChat. If I read it there, it would show as read. I took a deep breath and replied, "I'm not coming." Without waiting for his reply, I stuffed my phone back into my bag. Not far away, Patricia stood in a floor-length gown, dazzling in the crowd. Santiago stood beside her, smiling, helping her greet guests. As they chatted, Patricia suddenly curved her lips. Her expression softened. A magnolia bloomed on the branch, so beautiful it was breathtaking. I think I understood a little why Santiago liked her so much. I took a sip of the champagne in my hand. I envied her a little. That kind of sincere, unrestrained love. Fiery, passionate, unyielding. The kind I could never have. The kind I could never give. Chapter 16. I chatted with some friends for a while. The birthday banquet gradually neared its end. Standing before the champagne tower, I felt my phone vibrating in my bag. But I didn't pick it up. I just stared blankly at the tower. The click of high heels stopped beside me. I turned my head, meeting Patricia's smiling eyes. Rachel. Miss. Sorry. Santiago has been busy today. Perhaps the hospitality was lacking. Look at that phrasing. So, I really was just an outsider here. I pressed my lips together, smiling as I replied. Santi is a very warm-hearted person. Patricia, you know that. If he let a close friend's sister spend her birthday alone, he'd feel guilty. Well, I was indeed an outsider in this entanglement. Just a friend. But it was hard not to feel unfair on Santiago's behalf. Maybe because recently Ryan's way of reeling me in had stirred up my own budding simp tendencies. I saw a bit of myself in Santiago. Normally, I could never say things like this. I sighed inwardly. Miss Rachel. Patricia glanced at me, her tone gentle. But if a boyfriend always treats another woman better, wouldn't his girlfriend feel uncomfortable? So, she really came to challenge me. A vein throbbed at my temple. Sorry. That's not what I meant. The beauty covered her mouth apologetically. Santiago treats me so well. I always feel a little guilty toward you. No need. My phone kept vibrating in my bag. Feeling stifled. I turned to leave. If you truly feel guilty, Patricia, then it should be toward Santi. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Santiago walking toward us. I quickened my pace to leave. Miss Rachel, but my arm was caught. I tried to pull away, but in the struggle, I struck the champagne tower beside us. The massive structure collapsed from a single weak point, crashing down, glass shattered, wine spilled. Amid the chorus of shocked cries, I saw Santiago rushing forward, and in the instant of collapse, he threw his arms tightly around Patricia, shielding her. Sharp shards pierced into his skin, blood mingled with champagne, dripping down. I staggered, nearly collapsing into the sea of broken glass. Rachel! Santiago released the unscathed Patricia and hurried toward me. When his eyes fell on the wound on my leg, his expression froze for a second. I'll take you to the hospital. He reached out, intending to lift me, but Patricia called out, Santiago. The woman's outstretched hand dripped bright red blood across her pale skin, an alarming sight. Her eyes shimmered with tears. It hurts. The struggle in Santiago's eyes lasted only a second. The next, I saw him turn in panic, scooping Patricia into his arms. I'll take you to get treated. My legs refused to move. Shards of glass were still embedded in my calf. Pain throbbing, I instinctively reached for the corner of his clothes. In that moment of pause, I whispered, Santi, but he strode ahead, only glancing back once. Sorry. Rachel, let Fernando take you to the hospital. I have to go. My hand froze in midair. The gazes around me, pity, sympathy, were sharp enough to pierce through me. I lowered my eyes. Chapter 17. Fernando reacted quickly. He blocked in front of me. Rachel, I'll take you to the hospital. He was a mutual friend of mine and Santiago's. My face was pale, lips trembling slightly. Sorry, can you carry me? I don't think I can walk properly. He glanced at me, then swiftly scooped me up. His steps were hurried, his expression a bit grim. Santiago must be out of his mind, ignoring his own girlfriend and always running after someone else's. My lips were drained of color. The hotel lobby glittered with gold and jade. I looked up, and met the gaze of the man standing on the lobby staircase. Ryan lowered his eyes slightly. Someone beside him was speaking eagerly, but his expression remained indifferent, like nothing around him really mattered. Until the next instant, his eyes locked with mine. His fingers tapped once on his phone screen. The vibration in my bag instantly stopped. Almost without hesitation, he lifted his foot and strode toward us. The people beside him hadn't even reacted before they were left a few meters behind. The man stopped in front of Fernando. Fernando looked stunned. Ryan, you're back in the country. Fernando's older brother had been Ryan's classmate, so knowing each other wasn't surprising. But sweat was already beading on my forehead. I had no attention to spare. Ryan reached out, taking me from Fernando's arms. Ryan? Hey. I was taking her to the hospital. Fernando's hand froze in midair, but I was already a meter away in Ryan's arms. The man's voice was calm. I'll take her. Chapter 18. Ryan carried me into the car, curled up in his arms. I clutched the fabric of his shirt, wrinkling it in my grip. A few minutes later, the car stopped at a small clinic. Ryan held me as he carried me inside. The clinic doctor treated the wound efficiently, but when he extracted the shards of glass, the pain was sharp. Half of my body slumped into Ryan's embrace. He lowered his gaze, voice soft as he comforted me, "It'll be over soon." I lifted my eyes, weakly smiling at him. "I thought you'd take me home and call a private doctor instead." Ryan let out a small laugh. "Do I look like someone that rigid?" I smiled faintly. "That's how it always goes in TV dramas. The CEO's doctor friend gets woken up in the middle of the night to treat the heroine." Ryan curved his lips. Once the glass was removed, the doctor applied some medicine to the wound. Leaning against Ryan, I heard him speak, voice unreadable. "Where's your boyfriend? How did you get hurt?" I felt tired. Ryan wanted answers, but Fernando would tell him anyway. I didn't bother to hide it. "Go ask Fernando yourself." Ryan carried me with one arm, his other hand catching my wrist, fingertips lightly stroking the bone. I pulled my hand away, struggling out of his arms. I forced myself to stand. The wounds on my calf and knee still throbbed. Ryan tried to steady me, but I avoided his touch. His hand froze in midair, eyes lowering with faint desolation. Then, as if nothing had happened, he retracted it and smiled at me gently. "Let's go home." I nodded. Chapter 19. The car drove all the way back to the old house. When I got out, I staggered, and Ryan reached out, wrapping his arm firmly around my waist with a force that left no room for refusal. Then, in one smooth motion, he lifted me into his arms. The sudden weightlessness made me flustered. "I can walk." Ryan looked at me, his gaze gentle, but he didn't let go, carrying me straight into the house. "I'll take you to your room." Auntie Lou was in the living room. When she saw us, she gasped, raising her hand to cover her eyes halfway. "Sir, miss, you're back. Stop acting." "Auntie Lou." My toes curled tight in my shoes. I didn't dare open my eyes, praying it was all an illusion. Ryan chuckled softly, but his steps quickened as he carried me upstairs. The bed on the second floor had already been tidied by Auntie Lou. Ryan gently placed me on the bed, propped against the headboard. My face turned away from him. "Rachel?" His gaze lowered, his tone coaxing like he was soothing a child. "Are you angry?" I shut my eyes, cutting myself off from the magic attack of his face. My voice stiff. "Uncle," I said, "you crossed the line. I have a boyfriend." Chapter 20. The air fell quiet, silence tinged with awkwardness. I thought Ryan would be angry, that he'd leave my room immediately, but instead, he sighed, his voice sounding almost pitiful. "Holding you counts as crossing the line?" "Rachel, but I always used to hold you. Stop baiting me." The hook is practically ripping my lips apart. Of course holding me once isn't crossing the line, but his little gestures, too many of them, almost spelled out "I'm seducing you" on his face. After a long pause, I forced out stiffly, Silence. A chilling, suffocating silence. Only the sound of our breathing filled the room. "Do you like him?" I braced myself. "Yes." "How much?" His voice cooled. "Even if you know, he likes that sister of his more." "You still like him?" I stiffened my neck. Why? Why? There was no why. I just didn't want to be the fish you keep stringing along anymore. My mind raced. "Because he plays along with me." "Sorry, Santiago." Good friends slander each other's reputations together. I was desperate enough to say anything to drive Ryan away. "Plays along with what?" "Well, you know, whips, candles, you get it. I'm a little weird, but he accepts me, right? Only he's willing to be my, The more I spoke, the more confident I became. It's niche. Most people can't accept it. But he can. I can accept that he likes someone else more. It doesn't ruin our relationship. Thanks. In reality, I was a pure-hearted rookie who had never even kissed anyone. But just because I haven't dated doesn't mean I haven't read novels. What's wrong with coping through fiction when stressed? With my eyes shut, I couldn't imagine Ryan's expression. Probably shock, panic, maybe even disgust. Whatever. It didn't matter anymore. I pressed down the sourness in my chest. I couldn't love as unreservedly as Santiago did. Dignity was everything. I couldn't pretend nothing happened after being rejected and throw myself at him again. I knew feelings weren't something you could control. I knew I probably still liked him. But I didn't want to. I didn't want to be rejected again. I didn't want to spiral into thoughts because of him. I didn't want to fool myself into thinking he might ever like me back. This was the best way I could think of. For someone as aloof and proud as Ryan, he would never, ever accept it. Chapter 21. But, so strange, why is it that the one humiliating is me, yet the one hurting is also me? Chapter 22. The teardrops at the corner of my eyes were brushed away by his fingertips. Rachel, Ryan sighed softly. The body and the heart can't really be separated, it's only a matter of which comes first and which comes after. You're still young. That line again. I nearly bristled like a cat. Grief gave way to fury rushing straight to my skull. I opened my eyes and yanked his collar. What do you know, at least when I say something? He listens. Ryan lowered his gaze. Our eyes locking. His look was like a storm about to break. Pressing heavily down, the man's lips curved, voice soft as if whispering a spell. Then, Rachel, why don't you give me an order too? I gritted my teeth. Then kneel. All right. He didn't hesitate. He dropped straight to his knees. The wooden floor gave a dull thud. His knees parted. Thigh muscles taut. Dress pants stretched tight against them, and I still had his collar clenched in my hand. The man tilted his face up slightly, gazing at me from below. The sharp line of his jaw stood out. The faint flush at the corners of his eyes was it the remnants of fever or humiliation? His Adam's apple bobbed. His voice was hoarse. Am I doing well? Rachel. Deliberate. He drew out my name slowly, the trailing syllables lingering, laced with temptation. My mind went blank with a loud bang. You. No answer came. Ryan lowered his eyes, as if deliberately hiding the vulnerability on his face. His voice quiet. As long as Rachel likes it, I can do better than him. I can learn. Don't say the last line with that much certainty. Stop tempting me, even though I wanted to shout it out loud. But the moment I looked at that face, I shamefully swallowed. The small sound echoed too loudly in the room. A low chuckle slipped from Ryan's throat. Heat crept over my cheeks. He looked up. Under the ambiguous glow of the bedroom light, his phoenix eyes shimmered wet. Lower down, the shirt collar I'd crumpled had its top buttons undone. The faint outlines of beautiful lines beneath. So white. So broad. That, humiliating the untouchable flower on the high peak. Honestly, I kind of wanted to slap him. Enough. Rachel, do you even want your dignity? My hand was caught. The man pressed it against his cheek. The fever beneath my palm burned. Yes. Ryan's eyes curved, full of indulgence, as if he could see straight through my thoughts. Do whatever you want. His Adam's apple rolled. He whispered softly, Master, mine. Chapter 23. The phone in my bag buzzed wildly. In a panic, I pushed Ryan away and answered. Rachel. Santiago's voice was low. Could you come pick me up from the police station? Huh? I was desperate for an excuse to escape. If I stayed any longer, I was sure I'd lose control, so I didn't even think. All right, I'll come. Send me the address. Don't go. Ryan grabbed my hand. His grip around my wrist bone was tight. He raised his eyes. The corners tinged red. In his voice was naked vulnerability. Rachel, he said, don't go. A man in power. Lowering his head, my brows drew together, silent for a moment. But suddenly, I remembered that day at the airport, when I chased his plane, eyes swollen from crying, begging him again and again to stay. Chapter 24. I pulled my wrist free from his grasp, picked up my bag, and left without looking back. Chapter 25. Coming to the police station in the middle of the night to pick up a friend. At this point, I was being more than loyal. The lobby was nearly empty. Santiago was sitting on a chair, and when he saw me, he stood at once. It took him ages to reassure the police. Finally, I was able to take him away. The streets were desolate in the early morning. The tall white streetlights cast stark shadows across the injuries on Santiago's face. His lip was split. Bruises blotched his pale skin. A shocking sight. I stayed quiet for a moment. The tremor in my heart just moments ago vanished into thin air. What happened? Weren't you taking Patricia to get her wound treated? Santiago tried to smile instinctively, but it pulled at the cut on his lip, twisting his whole face. Well, after the banquet, I sent her home. Her boyfriend was drunk at home when he saw her come back all dolled up. He lost it. Said things like, "You didn't take me to your birthday. What were you trying to do?" Ugly words. "And then you hit him?" "No." Santiago lowered his eyes. "Do I look like the kind of irrational guy?" But he kept getting angrier. And then he tried to hit Patricia. When I saw him lay a hand on her, I went at him. Don't be fooled by the bruises on my face. He took the worst beating. The young man seemed to think of something and chuckled, but the smile vanished just as quickly. Patricia tried to stop us, but she couldn't. She said if we kept fighting, she'd cut ties with me. The neighbors called the cops. And at the station, the police wrote a report. The scumbag said I attacked him out of nowhere. I said he struck first. In the end, the police asked Patricia to testify. Santiago suddenly stopped walking, so I stopped too, turning back to look at him. Under the stark white lights, his eyes were empty. Patricia said that I was the one who hit him first. Chapter 26. What did I say before? A simp. In the end, never has a good ending. Chapter 27. That's awful, I said. Expressionless, that won't be the end of it, will it? No. Santiago lowered his head. The neighbors all saw it. They testified for me. That's good. I passed judgment. Your innocence is protected. But, Santiago said, she wasn't like this before. When I was little, there was a time I was sick, malnourished, very weak. The kids in the yard always bullied me, but Patricia would protect me. She was small and skinny too, wearing a white dress, but she'd bravely stand in front of me and drive those bad kids away. Later, her parents divorced. She moved away. When I saw her again, she was still so thin. Her father treated her badly. Then she was deceived by this guy, after he got her. The scumbag stopped loving her, insulted her, belittled her. I told her to break up, but she said he loved her. But how could love be like that? Santiago's tone was full of doubt. I wanted to protect Patricia, just like she once protected me. I wanted her to know, love isn't what she thinks it is. It's not belittling. It's not repeatedly bringing up sacrifice. It's not constantly emphasizing cost. But today, I suddenly realized I don't know her anymore. Maybe, ever since we reunited, she hasn't been that same girl. And then I started to doubt my own feelings for her. The young man covered his face, fingers trembling, his voice unsteady. Is it really love? Or just pity from above? Chapter 28. I looked at Santiago. The young man was a head taller than me. I was always soft toward him. He was too kind, and I could never harden my heart toward people with such goodness. I sighed, stepped forward, and wrapped my arms around him. Santiago froze for a moment. I rose on tiptoe, patting his shoulder. Don't overthink it. At least everything you've done was good. You've already done very well. Some hurdles, you just have to cross on your own. The young man paused. Then he reached out and held me tightly, his face buried against my shoulder. I patted his back gently. Rachel, Santiago's muffled voice came. Thank you for always staying by my side. Encircled in his arms, with only the sound of his heartbeat slowly steadying in my ear, I smiled. Because we're friends. Chapter 29. Under the lamp, lovers embraced. Xiao Gao stood aside, feeling like he was about to go insane. By the car, the man stood quietly. Half his face was hidden in the shadows, unreadable. But after so many years of grinding as a corporate mule, Xiao Gao had long since mastered the skill of reading the room. The boss is absolutely furious right now. Last time the competitor played dirty tricks, the boss had looked exactly like this in the car. Later, when the tables turned, the boss crushed them. Usually, the boss kept silent, wearing the same blank expression toward everyone. But behind the scenes, his methods were more ruthless than anyone's. Xiao closed his eyes and silently lit a candle in his heart for the young couple under the lamp. Chapter 30. I dreamed again. An unspeakable dream. The continuation of what had been interrupted by a phone call. The distance closed until our breaths entangled. Fragments of whimpers. I woke up with a start. Flan jumped onto the bed, rubbing gently against my face. The heat on my cheeks hadn't yet faded. I took a few deep breaths, forcibly pressed down the images in my mind, got up, walked out of the room. On the coffee table lay a pile of luxury shopping bags. Santiago's eyes sparkled when he saw me come out. Rachel, you're awake. I looked at the bags on the table with a questioning gaze. He suddenly broke into a grin. I bought them for you. Yesterday. I didn't send you to the hospital. I'm sorry. The young man lowered his eyes, a little guilty. Didn't dare look at me. Thank you, I said. But I wasn't angry. You didn't need to buy me so many gifts. Santiago lifted his eyes at once, staring at me. For a moment, his face froze. Really, not angry? I picked up Flan, who had been rubbing against my leg, and petted him twice. Rachel. I really know I was wrong. Santiago looked at me, pitiful. Don't say that just to spite me. Don't be mad at me. I looked at him, completely baffled. I'm really not mad. Santiago examined me for a while. Suspicious. Really, not at all? Why do you think I'd be mad? I countered. Just intuition. Santiago murmured. If it were Fernando, he and Patricia both got hurt. And you took Patricia to the hospital but not him. Do you think he'd be angry? Santiago shook his head. Exactly. I folded my arms. So why should I be angry? You're not like him, Santiago said urgently. There's no difference. I looked at him, expression calm. Only those who expect something will feel disappointed. But towards Santiago, I never carried any expectations. Love is weighty because of its difference. When placed on opposite sides of a scale, the unloved one has already prepared to be abandoned. I looked at him, smiled. You forgot. We're friends. Just friends. Chapter 30. I don't know if it was just my imagination. That day, Santiago's mood sank instantly, but I didn't care much. The following days went on as usual. I went to school every day, came home to take care of Flan, occasionally hung out with friends. I deliberately pushed Ryan to the back of my mind. He didn't reach out to me either. Once in a while, only occasionally, when picking up the phone and seeing his name as the sender, there would be a fleeting sense of loss. After school, when I came home and opened the door, someone was sitting on the sofa. Flan jumped off his lap and ran straight to me. I scooped him up and kissed him. Santiago looked at me, smiling, and pointed to the food on the coffee table. Rachel. His eyes curved with warmth. I bought groceries and cooked for you. I nodded. I didn't cook often, but when Santiago came by occasionally, he'd make a few meals. His cooking was delicious. I had no reason to refuse. Santiago busied himself in the kitchen. I sat on the sofa, playing with Flan. It overlapped with scenes from long ago. Instinctively, I picked up my phone. Only friends' messages sharing their daily lives. I tossed the phone aside, feeling like I was going crazy. Santiago, wearing an apron, placed the dishes on the table. The steaming food blurred his features slightly. His eyes curved with warmth. Rachel. Dinner's ready. An inexplicable husband-like feeling. I stood up and sat across from him. Santiago served me food. I had barely eaten a few bites. When the phone on the table rang, I instinctively looked over. The caller ID read Sister Patricia. He reflexively picked up the phone, then hesitated and glanced at me. Answer it, I said. If you want to, just answer. Chapter 31. The food on the table was still steaming hot, but I was the only one left at the table. Flan was jumping around on the balcony, knocking over the cat tree. I got up to clean up the mess. By accident, I glanced down and saw the two people standing below. Santiago stood tall and straight, lowering his head to look at Patricia in front of him. They said something, and Patricia looked as if she was about to cry. Suddenly, she lunged forward, trying to hug Santiago. I didn't keep watching. I turned away from the balcony and went back to the dining table. Santiago had left in a rush. His coat was still draped over the chair. I remembered how he had apologized before leaving. Sorry, Rachel. I'll be right back. What was there to apologize for? I thought. The one he owed the most apologies to was that nearly collapsing version of himself under the lamp that night. Not me. A noise suddenly came from the doorway. The password lock took a long time to open. I stood up. The next second, the door opened. Rachel. The young man rushed straight in, pulling me into his arms. He still carried a slight chill. I instinctively wanted to push him away, but he held me tighter. Santiago rested his chin on the top of my head. Just now, downstairs. Patricia tried to hug me. I didn't let her. Huh? And what does that have to do with me? My mind was full of confusion. Santiago let out a sigh. I've really let go, for the first time. I rejected her. Rachel. His warm breath brushed over my hair, tinged with joy, a hint of realization, and the slightest trace of uncertainty. I responded softly. That's good. The hands pressed against his chest pushed harder, trying to break free from his overstepping intimacy, but he only held me tighter. Stay with me. Rachel. Santiago lowered his eyes, his gaze shining bright like a puppy's. I could almost imagine his ears perking up. I want to celebrate. Chapter 32. The dim bar lights cast an ambiguous glow. I sat beside Santiago, sipping lightly from a low-alcohol drink. Though honestly, I didn't understand what was worth celebrating about not being a simp anymore. But Santiago, he really reminded me of my aunt's little mutt back in the countryside. Round puppy eyes when he looked at people. Impossible to refuse. Santiago drank glass after glass, as if determined not to leave sober. I really rejected her. The young man was thin-skinned. The alcohol flushed his face, turning it pink. Propping his chin on one hand, he looked at me in profile, his eyes hazy, misty, like some innocent, naive boy being coaxed into drinking too much. I don't want to go on anymore. I did so much for her, yet she still prefers that scumbag. Santiago tilted back his head, downing the strong liquor in front of him in one gulp. Shadows flickered. The clear liquid slid down his jaw, past his Adam's apple, disappearing into his shirt. For no reason. Unbearably sensual. Great. So he's done being a simp, but now it feels like I'm the one simping lately. A suffocating frustration rose in me. How did it end up that I'm even more pathetic than Santiago? Chapter 33. The phone on the table suddenly buzzed. I picked it up, unlocked it, and saw a message from Ryan. The person beside me was still rambling on. The moment I opened it, I didn't even have a chance to regret. The message instantly turned into read. Rachel. I've practiced for a long time. Ryan asked. Is this right? The picture he sent was from a bird's eye view. A man's shirt stretched tight against his muscles. A leather collar around his throat. The buckle pressed down too snugly. His Adam's apple trapped. Veins bulging against pale skin tinged with pink. Further down, a glimpse of bare flesh. My mouth went dry instantly. Rachel. The young man, eyes brimming with tears, looked up with clear discontent in his gaze. What are you doing? I quickly flipped the phone face down. No, nothing. I grabbed the drink on the counter and downed it in one go. Santiago stared at me, dumbfounded, then suddenly flushed red. That was the drink I just ordered. He muttered. I had just taken a sip. The sharp burn rushed straight to the top of my head. The alcohol seared from my throat all the way down to my stomach. Sorry. I forced myself to sound calm. Too burning. I meant the drink. It's fine. Santiago looked at me worriedly. It's just a bit strong, you. My face felt so hot. I touched it. My head seemed light and floaty, but my mouth was still parched. I made a snap decision and told him to get me more drinks. But in the bar, every drink had alcohol. I drank a few more. It only got worse. No more. While I still had some sense left, I rested my head on the counter. I'll ask Gloria to come pick me up. Santiago lowered his eyes, reached out to touch my forehead, then suddenly smiled. My thoughts were slowing down. I didn't dodge, just kept my eyes open, staring at him. Our gazes collided. mine steady, unflinching. Santiago suddenly ducked his head, flustered, breaking eye contact. What's wrong? The young man covered his face. A blush climbed from his neck to his cheeks. He wouldn't look at me, only his jawline tensed tightly. Unintentionally, his true thoughts slipped out between his lips. So cute. Chapter 34. I think so too. Gloria suddenly spoke, pinching my cheek, kinda like a drunk cat. That familiar scent of mandrake. My heart settled a little. Then I'll take her with me. You call your friend to pick you up. Santiago nodded. Gloria grabbed my hand. I leaned against her side, turned back and waved to Santiago. Goodbye. When I turned around, I didn't see the hand he had subconsciously stretched out to keep me. It hung there in vain. Chapter 35. I sat in the passenger seat and closed my eyes. Gloria bent down to fasten my seatbelt. She gently patted my face. Not bad, drunk but still sober enough to message me. I tilted my head, leaning on the car door without opening my eyes. You're smart, okay? Gloria said perfunctorily. Then shall we go to my place? I lost consciousness for a moment. When I came back to it, the car was already on the road. Gloria seemed to be on the phone. She's pretty drunk. I'm taking her home now. Where else? Of course my place. Are you crazy? I can't possibly bring her over there. Who's that? I asked. Gloria was startled. You're awake? Yeah, Ryan. I leaned my head against the window, finding a moment of clarity on the cold glass. He asked me to bring you to his place. Let's go, I said. Are you insane? Gloria's eyes widened. No, the alcohol dulled my brain. I pressed my forehead fully against the window. I just want to make things clear with him. Why did he reject me? Why come back after running away for 3 years? Why, knowing I already had a boyfriend, did he still try to seduce me? Why always act like he loved me so much? Gloria cursed under her breath. She jerked the steering wheel and made a sudden U-turn. Chapter 36. The car stopped in front of the old house. My consciousness blurred again, and someone carried me out of the car. It seemed Gloria said something to Ryan. My head tilted, leaning against Ryan's chest, eyes half shut. Then I'll go. Gloria glanced at me in Ryan's arms. Ryan's lips curved, his gaze never leaving me. Thank you. The car drove away. Ryan carried me back into the room. I leaned against the headboard, forcing my eyes open to look at him. Ryan, why did you? My eyes suddenly widened. His back was to me, his shirt half off, broad shoulders, narrow waist, well-defined muscles along his back. On his bare skin, the collar at the back of his neck was eye-catching. Ryan paused, turned his head slightly, a smile in his eyes, trying to keep my facial muscles steady, afraid my own expression would look too pervy. I could only glare at him coldly. Put your clothes back on, okay? Ryan lowered his eyes obediently. Slowly, he buttoned his shirt one by one, when I thought there wouldn't be any more tricks. He came over, half kneeling by my bed. What the hell? Stop testing how far a decent person's patience can go. Earlier I forgot. In my heart there is both Buddha and demon, but I sealed the demon deep inside, leaving only the Buddha. In the middle I forgot. Then let me ask you, when a real demon appears in front of you, can you still suppress it? What kind of nonsense is this? My head was spinning. Then, Ryan lifted his gaze. His eyes flickered and swayed, yet like a hook, they caught my heart mercilessly. He whispered, "Let Rachel help me undress, okay?" My hand was pulled, guided to rest on his collarbone. My fingertips touched the collar. It was like being burned. I tried to pull my hand back, but he pressed it firmly against the collar. The man chuckled. His voice was hoarse. "Master, help the little puppy, will you?" Chapter 37. I told you. Sometimes being too quick to learn is not a good thing. God knows what Ryan has been picking up these past few days. It's a bit too much. My already foggy brain was made even more dizzy by his pull. I raised my hand and cupped his face. The joint of my middle finger pressed under his chin, forcing him to lift his head. The light fell on his lashes. His gaze shimmered. Ryan narrowed his eyes. His lips moved. almost like a sigh. Rachel. The pad of my thumb pressed hard against his lips. His name turned into a moan. Moisture glistened. My fingertip pried open his teeth, pressing against the sharp fangs meant for tearing food. His lips parted slightly, in the misty depths of his eyes. Desire churned and clamored, but on the surface, he remained obedient. I lowered my eyes, looking at him like this, and suddenly laughed. My uncle said, the body and the spirit can never be separated. But me, I only like a clean body. Warmth brushed against my fingertip. My finger was taken into his mouth. Ryan tilted his face upward. The corners of his eyes were stained with lustful red. The collar around his neck pressed tight against his Adam's apple, making his breathing labored, faintly gasping, from icy restraint to feverish chaos. Rachel. His gaze was hazy with water. The ends of his eyes tinged red. The man sighed softly, lowering his head. His forehead rested against my knee, like a begging puppy wagging its tail. His voice rough and low. The little dog's body and heart, from beginning to end, they've only ever belonged to master. That is to say, what man alive could withstand this kind of temptation? Chapter 39. My head exploded with a bang. I reached out and yanked hard at the collar around his neck. The light was switched off. Under the moonlight, hot, reckless, relentless entanglement. It was the tide of spring, impossible to stop. 1,000 whispers, 100 breaths, waves of pleasure. The last moment before blackout was me unconsciously cursing, "You damn dog." Ryan lowered his head, kissing away the tears at the corner of my eyes. A low laugh spilled from his throat, dripping with delight. He said, "Woof." Chapter 40. Sore, swollen. My whole body hurt, as if Flan had run parkour all night on top of me. The side of my neck still tingled faintly from a bite. I opened my mouth, ready to scold Flan for being ungrateful, even sneaking a bite at his own mom. But a hand around my waist pinned me still. In an instant, goosebumps ran all over me. Shit. Flan became a spirit. No. What the hell? I dragged a few frames of yesterday out of my foggy brain. My whole body froze, wishing I could slap myself a few times. Ryan's arm was draped across my waist, his breathing long and even. His chin rested atop my head, warm breaths brushing against my scalp. I dared not move. Move. Damn legs. I cursed silently, holding my breath as I shifted little by little. Just as my toes touched the carpet, my waist was pulled back. His arm tightened, though his eyes never opened, as if instinctively guarding a treasure. Heart pounding. I held my breath for a while before prying his hand away bit by bit. My legs were so weak I nearly collapsed on the carpet, barely managing to stand. I didn't dare look back, just grabbed at my clothes scattered on the floor and threw them on. Rachel. The rustle behind me. Ryan sat up slowly. I froze in place. The bite on my neck stung faintly. The marks across my body seemed to burn. That fine itch and dull ache spread like wildfire. I decided to strike first. I turned and snapped, "You beast." But the words caught halfway. Silk slipped down to his waist, spring light spilling all at once. Around his neck, the collar had left a glaring ring of bruises. From collarbone to chest were scattered bite marks, like red plum blossoms crushed into snow. The deepest one had even broken the skin. His waist and abdomen were worse, cross-hatched with scratches from nails, finger marks still imprinted on his abs. Morning light gilded his body, leaving nowhere for those chaotic traces to hide. Like a priceless porcelain smashed then pieced back together, every crack seeped with the glaze of desire. The words at my lips swallowed back down. For a moment, I couldn't tell who the real beast was. The man's brows held a smile, unconcerned with my unfinished insult. The sunlight painted his profile, turning his lashes faint gold. "Where are you going?" I steadied myself, forcing my eyes not to glance downward, spitting out stiffly, "Back." "Back where?" His voice was calm. "Rachel, this is your home." Ryan. For the first time, I called his full name. My parents aren't dead. It wasn't his place to say that. Ryan was choked for a second, his tone softening. "You know that's not what I meant." The phone on the floor buzzed, breaking the awkward air. I bent down and glanced at it. It was a call from Santiago. "Boyfriend?" Ryan's tone cooled at the end. I gave a small hum. I didn't press accept, turning to head outside. And what about me? Ryan's voice was soft, almost a whisper, his lashes casting shadows downward. The red marks on his porcelain skin stood out, like blood seeping from the cracks of broken china. I had never seen him like this, fragile, like a moon about to shatter. On purpose, I reminded myself. This man always knows how to put on an act. Uncle. I curved my lips. I was drunk, not very clear-headed. The excuse he once used to reject me, at this moment, became the cover for what happened last night. Let's pretend nothing ever happened, I said. All right? Chapter 41. When I left, I didn't look back, so I never saw Ryan's expression behind me. It wasn't until the cold wind on the street brushed my face that things began to feel real. A little sadness. Sadness at my own duplicity. Clearly, I still liked him, yet I still chose to act just like he did before, using the most hurtful words to stab him. But damn, it felt good. A petty, vengeful little girl got her satisfaction, though it felt a bit like some cheap food poisoning fantasy. Who cares? If it feels good, that's a win. The rest, I'll deal with later. I glanced at the missed call on my phone and sent Santiago a text back. I'm coming back. Chapter 42. When the taxi stopped at the gate of the neighborhood, Santiago was just swiping his card at the entrance, holding soy milk and fried dough sticks. I ran right into him. The young man was simply dressed in a white t-shirt, and when he saw me, the corners of his lips curved slightly. His eyes still carried a faint redness from a hangover. Rachel. Santiago's eyes lit up. Perfect timing. I just went down to buy breakfast. I nodded, but didn't pick up the conversation. Today, Santiago seemed especially talkative. He kept chattering on about something. On a normal day, I'd at least humor him with a few responses. But right now, my mind was a mess. Distracted. I went upstairs, pulled out my keys, and started to unlock the door. The person behind me moved. Warm fingertips brushed my hair aside, landing on my neck, right on the bite mark Ryan had left yesterday. A jolt of electricity burst through me. Without thinking, I slapped Santiago's hand away. I covered my neck and stepped back 2 paces. What are you doing? Santiago's hand froze midair, a flicker of confusion flashing across his face. Sorry. His voice held a trace of awkwardness as he slowly drew his hand back. Rachel. I'm sorry. I apologized. I overreacted. Santiago's words got stuck halfway, neither in nor out, as if something was caught in his throat. But in the end, he swallowed it all back down. Santiago's voice was soft, almost as if trying to cover something up. Let's go in first. Chapter 43. The moment I stepped inside, Flan leapt off the sofa. I caught him squarely in my arms, stroking the soft fur of my cat. I felt a pang of guilt, almost wrongfully blamed my baby for biting me. It was Mommy's fault. Just as I was about to shower Flan with an epic level of love, Santiago suddenly called out, Rachel. Flan's paw hooked into my hair, forcing me to turn halfway back with my neck bent. The motion twisted and zombie-like. I was just about to crack a joke with Santiago, maybe ask if I looked like one of those side characters in Train to Busan, when I heard him say, Where were you last night? Huh? It felt like the creepy guilt of being interrogated for cheating, and at the same time the absurdity of a widow being scolded for not staying faithful to her chastity memorial arch. But clearly, there was nothing between us. I pried my hair free from Flan's paw and looked at Santiago. The young man was still standing at the doorway, the light at his back, making it impossible to see his face. Don't start this. I rushed to break the atmosphere, but the fat cat never again. Rachel. What the hell is wrong with you? Dragging out a 500-year-old stale joke? I shut my mouth. In the tragic drama lighting, the atmosphere suddenly brightened. Santiago's complexion cycled from pale to black to green to red, like a painter's palette. Finally, he ground his teeth. Rachel, are you out of your mind? You're the one out of your mind. I said, I came home last night. What about you? Santiago's face eased slightly. Went to a friend's place. I nodded perfunctorily. That's it? His voice sounded muffled. What else do you want? I was puzzled. You don't want to ask which friend, or how long I stayed? how much I drank, whether I've never asked before either. My friendship with Santiago was the kind of relationship where you've known each other for over a decade. Close but never quite heart to heart. Unlike Gloria and Santiago, he also had other friends he was closer to. Whenever he needed someone to talk to, I was never the first person he thought of. It had always been that way. Is that so? Santiago's voice was quiet, so before. You never asked either. Chapter 44. I was busy with school stuff for a few days. Since I had secured a spot for graduate studies, my schedule was fairly free. Most of my classmates were occupied with job hunting or preparing for exams. Santiago, after graduation, went straight into his family's company, also basically just coasting. Our relationship had become somewhat subtle. It seemed the same as before, yet also not quite. Santiago wasn't being a simp anymore, and I'd already gotten to taste the must-eat one on the business district's food list. All in all, we both had bright futures. Just sometimes, the craving still struck. In those deep, quiet nights, certain scenes flashed in my mind with startling clarity. Horse breaths mixed with the faint friction of leather on a collar. The scent of heated wood thickened with desire. The scalding and faintly sticky touch of skin. And his gaze when he looked down at me, hidden beneath half-lowered lashes, brimming with possessiveness? Strange. My mind was blurred with mosaic, and yet that single frame refused to stay clear. I pressed at my temples, picked up my phone absent-mindedly, just in time to see Ryan's text. Aunt Lou just learned to make soufflé. She's asking what flavor you'd like. Always the same. After rejecting me years ago, he still pretended to care like family, even though this time it was me who suggested we act like nothing ever happened. Somehow it only made me more upset. As if, to him, my love, my hate, my resentment were all just trivialities, not worth mentioning. Wanting to see a rational person lose control, such is human weakness. I sighed, leaving his message unanswered. What's so good about this man, that I just can't help liking him? Even putting aside Ryan's face and body, forget it. I can't put them aside. Let it stew. Maybe one day he'll lower his head first. A fantasy born of being overinflated by god-tier delusion. No doubt. Chapter 45. When I came back from the library on Friday, I saw Santiago lying gloomily on the sofa at home. He was petting Flan against the direction of the fur. The little cat puffed up into a dandelion under his hand. Luckily, Flan was a good cat with feline dignity. I beckoned, and Flan leapt from his arms into mine. I smoothed the kitten's fur. It was like Santiago suddenly regained his soul. He wailed and lunged toward me, eyes brimming with tears. Rachel, a big dog in complete denial of his own size. I lifted Flan to block him. The kitten's paw pads pressed against his face, refusing his closeness. Santiago caught Flan's paw and squeezed it. My dad wants me to go to Australia next month. So sudden? He said something about expanding into overseas markets, making me get some experience. The young man's hair was all tousled from his own grip. I said I didn't want to go, but he said I must. The paperwork's all done. He never cared about me before. I really don't want to go. Truly heaven sent. The pain of wondering whether a friend likes you lies in not daring to say it, not being able to test it. But now, problem solved. No more constant anxiety. Still, I played it safe with a standard line. Your dad is doing it for your own good. Bullshit! He shouted back. There'll be no good food over there, no friends. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, scattering spots of light across his face. His Adam's apple bobbed. And no you. The last few words were as light as a cat's paw landing. Every alarm in my head went off. I threw Flan right onto his face. The kitten was used to being tossed around. Lightly, he landed on top of Santiago's head. His head got smacked by the cat. The tips of his ears, already red, now looked as if they might bleed. And he flushed with anger. Rachel! What the hell are you doing? Thank God. Thank God. Another crisis strangled in its cradle. Not bad. Me. I exhaled a long breath. Sorry. Slipped. You think a slip of the hand makes it okay to throw a cat at someone's face? Sorry. Sorry. I reached to pick Flan up. Santiago bent down, lowered his eyes, lashes casting trembling shadows under them. Not good. My hand froze midair. Just as Flan hopped down along his shoulder, I yanked my hand back immediately and stepped back 2 paces. I'm off to scoop poop. The moment I turned, I caught a whisper, almost inaudible, always like this. Rachel, you idiot. Chapter 46. It was too soft. So soft I wasn't sure I'd heard it right. Like an illusion. It took me ages. Only after cleaning the litter box did I piece the words together. I broke into a cold sweat. Santiago. The young man was sprawled on the sofa playing with his phone. Utterly ungraceful. Just like before. Must have misheard. Better have misheard. Chapter 47. I tried to comfort myself, but still couldn't help avoiding Santiago. One Ryan was already troublesome enough. Adding another would be a nightmare. I don't want that cliché plot where a friend suddenly falls for you. It's creepy. Not only do you lose a friend, you also gain 0 benefits. As for Ryan, his messages always carried hints. Like, image, high school uniform. Aunt Lou found it while cleaning the closet. Can't fit into it anymore. In the picture, the white shirt was barely buttoned with 2 or 3 fasteners. The tie hanging loosely. The man's skin was pale as jade. No trace of the marks from that tormenting night. Yet it stirred reckless impulses. I swallowed hard and forwarded the message to Gloria to complain. She replied with a, "You're so thirsty," meme. He's baiting you. Did you bite? I answered honestly. No wonder my mouth's been inflamed lately. I thought it was an ulcer. Turns out it's the fishhook tearing me open. Gloria said, "Don't bother with him. Just play dumb. I bet it won't be long before he breaks." My best friend's suggestion was crappy, but it hit the spot. Not for anything else, but for all those nights I chewed over his every word. Those ambiguous lines he brushed off casually. Those times I stared at his goodnight for hours, dissecting the punctuation into 1,000 possible meanings. I want him to taste that torment all over again. Chapter 48. I hadn't expected to run into Patricia. I rarely had any contact with her to begin with. Besides, I couldn't say I liked her. When we crossed paths at the cafe, my manners made me hesitate for a few seconds about whether to greet her. But then she walked straight toward me, a beauty, worn and fragile, making her seem even more pitiable. "Miss Rachel." Patricia raised her hand, revealing a delicate wrist as she tucked stray strands of hair behind her ear. "Could we talk?" There doesn't seem to be much for us to talk about. The coffee I'd ordered was still being made, so I couldn't leave right away. Patricia smiled faintly, as if unbothered by my coldness. "Santiago's leaving, isn't he?" I gave a short reply. "I see." Her voice was as light as a sigh. "Then what will you do? Australia is so far away." "Ah, so she was here to put on a performance." I curved my lips into a smile. "Love doesn't change with distance. Miss Patricia." Patricia choked on my words. "Is that so?" "Perhaps. After all, Santiago is such a good person. When someone loves you, he'll give you all the security you need." This time it was me who was caught off guard. When people fall into their artistic moods, they should never spill it in front of someone who doesn't love them. The one who loves you will ache for your brokenness, will want to soothe your pain, but the one who doesn't will only cringe in secondhand embarrassment. What exactly are you trying to say? Do you know which day he's leaving? I'd like to see him off. Send him a message and ask. He deleted me. That means he doesn't want to see you. My words were blunt. Patricia flinched, her face paling, like a flower trembling in the rain. I didn't mean to. She suddenly grabbed my sleeve. That day, he wasn't like the others. He was always there. I know. I wronged him. I always took his kindness for granted, always thinking because he was different, he'd stay with me no matter what. That's why I kept hurting him again and again. Tears welled in the corners of her eyes. I nearly felt an itch to wipe them away. Stay calm, Rachel. This is not the time to be bewitched by beauty. I shoved my hands in my pockets, playing it cool. Miss Rachel, please. I just want to apologize to him in person. Just then, my order was ready. I picked up the caramel macchiato before looking at her again. So you do know. You knew full well he liked you. Yet you kept stringing him along. And you knew I was his girlfriend. Yet still came to me for help. I spoke calmly, pausing ever so slightly at the word girlfriend. You could have gone to any of his other friends. I was the last person you should have sought out. You don't truly want to apologize, Miss Patricia, nor do you truly feel remorse. It's just to satisfy your need for performance. After hurting someone who gave you genuine devotion, you drop a few fox tears from your lofty perch to flaunt your hidden sense of superiority, putting on an act of regret, while your eyes still brim with the arrogance of one who is both beloved and the one who inflicts pain, confident that he'll soften at your pleading. Miss Patricia, you always say you're sorry, but your apologies are just excuses for yourself. You emphasize how helpless you were, but deep down you knew Santiago would always forgive you unconditionally. That's why you dared to hurt him over and over again. Human weakness. Patricia stepped back half a pace, tears sliding down her face. You enjoy being put on a pedestal, but you're terrified that if he truly leaves, there'll be no one left to catch you. I said, I won't pass on your words. If you truly feel sorry, then tell Santiago yourself. Just as I was about to turn away, I suddenly remembered Santiago that night under the street lamp, remembered his words about the thin, frail little girl who still stood in front of others. Humans are complicated, contradictory creatures. I sighed, and still offered her the tissue from my pocket. Goodbye, Miss Patricia. Chapter 49. The date of Santiago leaving the country was getting closer and closer. He often came over. The apartment was rented under his name, and I didn't have the heart to kick him out. There was also too much stuff in the house to clear out in a short time, so I had no choice but to stay out during the day. Every time I came back at night, I'd see him pacing circles in the living room, changing into my shoes. I asked, "Do you have a hobby of cosplaying as a little bee in front of others?" Flan tilted his head at him from the cat tree, tail flicking impatiently. Santiago muttered, "Sulky, I had a huge fight with my dad. Now I can only crash at your place." The old man refuses to change his mind no matter what. He insists I go abroad. He scooped up Flan into his arms, rubbing him. "What do I do?" "Flan, I'm leaving. You'll miss me, won't you?" The kitten let out a meow. Santiago's eyes grew teary with emotion. I walked past him to pour myself some water. "What about you, Rachel?" I turned my head toward him. His lashes were half lowered, gaze still on the kitten in his arms, but his eyelashes trembled slightly, like the wings of a butterfly. "I will," I said casually. "Everyone will miss you." In that instant, Santiago's hands tightened, and Flan jumped from his arms in alarm, padding over to my legs. "Sorry." It was like he woke from a dream. "Sorry, Flan. If it hurts, he'll bite you." I picked the cat up. "It's fine." Santiago froze for a moment. "Rachel, the day I leave, you'll come see me off, right?" I nodded. "I will." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced down. It was a message from Ryan. Just some harmless check-in. I replied with a meme, then carried Flan upstairs back to my room. Lately, Ryan seemed a bit off too. Usually, he would text me right at mealtimes with useless lines like "Aunt Lou made soup," followed by vague hints, waiting for me to take the bait. But recently, his messages had all been perfectly proper. I scrolled up through the chat history and forwarded it to my strategist. "Gloria, giving up? No way. That old fox? Impossible." He once cut off an opponent company's entire raw material supply chain just to win a project. Then had the bank suddenly call in their loans, forced the other boss to kneel overnight begging him to buy them out. Did Santiago's dad's company just win a bid? Check who handed over the olive branch. I froze. Realization dawning. Gloria kept sending messages. That sly fox, exiling his love rival to Australia, then making his slow play at you. I didn't reply, but did a quick search. Sure enough, the latest construction project Santiago's family had won was contracted by a subsidiary of Shang Corporation. It felt like reading too many web novels had rotted my brain. Something about it was just off. After washing up, I lay in bed and closed my eyes, until suddenly, in the middle of the night, I sat up. No, he's insane, and so am I. The next morning, I asked Ryan where he was. After receiving his reply, I got dressed and headed straight to Shang Corporation's tower. The receptionist knew me, so she didn't stop me. As soon as the elevator doors opened, I was met with Xiao Gao's terrified eyes. I nodded at him in greeting. then pushed open the office door without hesitation. Ryan was bent over, signing documents. The tip of his fountain pen carved sharp arcs across the paper. He didn't look up at the sound of the door opening. Finally willing to see me? You did it, I said firmly. Ryan's hand paused, ink blotting the paper. He lifted his gaze to me, eyes dark. He's not worthy of you. Whether he is or not isn't yours to judge. Rachel. In that instant, the sharp edge of a man in power flared, then was deliberately hidden away. It absolutely cannot be him. You know I won't let someone fickle stay by your side. What right do you have to say that? I let out a cold laugh. Do you really see yourself as my elder? My uncle? Ryan fell silent for a moment. Fine, even if it's not him. I cut in. There will be someone else. Someone who truly loves me. When it comes to hurting those who love you, it seems people are always self-taught. So I deliberately picked the words that would wound him most. Someone who truly loves you? The man repeated the phrase under his breath. Rachel, do you know? I could have been much harsher with him, but I was afraid you'd hate me for it. Sunlight from the floor-to-ceiling window swept across his elegant brows, exposing the faint shadows of exhaustion beneath his eyes. I froze for a moment before finally saying, don't touch Santiago again. No matter how much Ryan and I fought, tangled, or hurt each other, those were matters between us. But others couldn't be part of our play. The atmosphere froze for a beat, our eyes locked, before I could make sense of what was in his gaze. Ryan yielded first. All right, I won't touch him. Me, braced for a huge fight? You know. He lowered his eyes, a soft smile tugging at his lips, his voice carrying the fragility of cracked porcelain. I've never been able to handle you. I was choked silent. He was rare, fragile, like a crane drenched in rain. Great. Now my head was full of thoughts I shouldn't be having. Who can resist? A man's vulnerability is just so. I shut my eyes, trying to steady myself, but then I heard a whisper, almost a sigh. Must you really treat me this way? Rachel. I snapped my eyes open. He had his back to me, the sunlight pouring through the glass window, stretching his shadow long and thin. I was just about to speak, but his voice had already returned to its usual calm. Friday, come home for a bit. Aunt Lou misses you. I stared at his back, and suddenly, I didn't want to keep tugging at this anymore. I said, all right. Chapter 50. Rachel was thrilled again. A healthy romance is important, sure, but a twisted romance is far more exciting. When I got back, Santiago was spinning in circles with Flan in his arms. I don't have to go abroad anymore. My dad suddenly changed his mind. Flan's fur puffed up like a dandelion, and he looked at me in despair with a meow begging for help. This foolish child. I felt a pang of guilt for almost dragging him down with me. Put Flan down first. Santiago set Flan down, then moved to throw his arms around me. But for a split second, he hesitated. He shouldn't have. I sighed. Walking over to the coffee table, I pulled open the drawer and took out a velvet box. Inside was the ring he had once prepared for Patricia. I had worn it that one day, but ever since then, it stayed in the box. Santiago, I said, our fake boyfriend-girlfriend relationship should have ended the moment you decided to give up on Patricia. I forgot to tell you, these next few days, I'll be moving out. The young man's smile froze. Why? Because it's too easy for people to misunderstand. Then let them misunderstand. Suddenly, his hand caught my wrist, though without much force. The fingers on my wrist trembled slightly. What if I said, this time, I want it to not be fake? No, I said, I already like someone else. What do you like about him? The young man pressed urgently. I froze. I liked how, when I was 10, he knelt down and wrapped a band-aid around my scraped knee, saying, Rachel, don't cry. I liked how, at 15, he stayed up all night tutoring me in math, his pen scratching across paper until dawn. I liked how even when I threw childish tantrums and declared we're not friends anymore, he still knocked on my door every night to remind me to drink milk. How he could see through all my lies, yet still indulged my clumsy acting. Those unspoken codes, those words we blurted out in sync, those half-second glances that set my heartbeat ablaze, those fragments, drawn out and soaked in years, entwined around my heart like vines, like a kite I had chased for 20 years, its string long since tangled into my very bones. Santiago's voice trembled. What does he have that I don't? Has he known you longer than I have? Is he better looking than me? Or is it? He was like a desperate gambler, piling all his chips onto the table, and then losing it all. Too similar. Like that day Ryan asked me why I liked Santiago. My mouth moved faster than my brain, and the words slipped out, slicing the air thick with awkwardness. He satisfies my special kink, and the air grew even more awkward. I wanted to bite off my own tongue. I mean, you know. I'm the more dominant type. Santiago froze, his ears flushing bright red. The silence was thick as syrup, smothering everything inside. I cursed myself for being a complete idiot. Say something to break the ice. Quick. But all my brain could supply was 10 years of life and death apart. 5 years of life and death apart. Santiago. Just remember, don't care what you remember. Just remember. Enough. Stop recycling corny lines. But the young man suddenly lifted his head. Adam's apple bobbing. I can do that too. Chapter 51. I stared at him in shock. I nearly blurted out the words, "Are you insane?" This. Santiago lifted his gaze to me, innocent puppy eyes. I turned to leave, but he caught my wrist. Rachel. His usually clear tone carried a huskiness I couldn't name. I tried to pull my hand back, but he gripped my wrist firmly. I glared at him, my temper sparking. Santi. The next second, he grabbed my hand and slapped it hard against his own face. The young man's skin was thin, and he hadn't held back much strength. A flush spread quickly across his pale cheek, tears welling at the corner of his eyes. His puppy eyes glistened with water, a sight to break anyone's heart. Rachel. He whispered my name, like a puppy trying to please. Did you enjoy that? Damn it. I seized his collar, almost ready to slap him again. Santiago trembled. His hand came up to brush against mine, fingertips circling lightly. Ticklish. This side. He tilted his head, offering the other cheek. If you didn't, then maybe a little harder. Shame and excitement flushed his eyes red at the corners. He watched me carefully, as if terrified I hadn't had enough fun. I let go, retreating 2 weak steps, but the hem of my shirt was caught. Santiago lowered his eyes, not daring to look at me, in a soft voice. Rachel, did I do something wrong? God. I almost laughed out of anger. It's that you're both too good, which only makes me look like the bad one. First Ryan, now him. Santiago still clutched the fabric of my shirt, head bowed, bangs falling into his eyes, shadowing them. His voice was muffled, like crumpled paper. Am I shallow? I just let go of Patricia, and now I'm saying I like you. A bitter smile tugged his lips. You must think I'm frivolous. But I'm not. He suddenly lifted his head, eyes rimmed red, gaze shining with clarity. Rachel, I can tell the difference. Before, I mistook dependence and gratitude for love, but with you it's different. You're always there when I'm at my worst. Drinking with me, calling me an idiot, cleaning up my messes. Calling you an idiot counts too? His fingers unconsciously rubbed at the hem of my shirt. You never said I deserved it, like others would. You only rolled your eyes and said a simple crash sooner or later, but every time, you were on my side. I stayed silent, pulling back 2 steps, gently freeing my shirt, trying to keep my tone soft. I'm good to you because we're friends. Friends? Santiago gave a bitter smile. But Rachel, do you know? Even if your kindness was only for a friend, it was enough for me to fall. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry, Santiago. I said. I spoke too quickly before. The person I like, it's not because of anything else. Not a kink. Not because he looks better, or has known me longer. It's simply because he's him. Santiago's fingers clenched tight, knuckles whitening. And he likes you back? Yes. Then, can we still be friends? His voice trembled. I just want to stay by your side as a friend. Isn't it enough if I'm still good to you that way? My eyes fell on the red at the corners of his eyes, and I shook my head. No. Why not? Because if you like me, staying friends will only make you think you still have a chance. People are greedy. If one day I fought with Ryan and drunkenly came to you crying, would your hands tremble as you wiped my tears? If he forgot my birthday gift, would the cake you prepared hide your private hope? I looked straight at him. Santiago, I'm not noble. I know too well how intoxicating it feels to be the one favored. I'm afraid one day, I too would take your kindness for granted. Santiago stared at me blankly, then suddenly laughed. When he smiled, the sharp tips of his canines showed, like some stubborn little creature, innocent yet unyielding. You know these words are meant to push me away, but what if I like you even more for it? He stepped back, raising a hand to cover his eyes. Rachel, how can you even reject someone like this? Through his fingers, I glimpsed a flash of tears. When he lowered his hand, his eyes were red, but his lips still curved upward. I understand. I wish you happiness. I said. And I wish you happiness too. Chapter 52. After moving out, I stayed at Gloria's place for a few days. Before I went back on Friday, Gloria leaned against the doorway, watching me slip one of the new couple rings onto my finger. With a teasing smile, she asked, really not going to keep him on the hook a little longer? I still wanted to watch him squirm some more. I said, I'm hungry. Gloria burst out laughing, flicked my forehead. Then I wish you a smooth feast. Chapter 53. When I pushed the door open, Aunt Lou was just coming out of the kitchen with a plate of sweet and sour ribs. The moment she saw me, her smile stretched wide enough to show her teeth. Rachel, finally you're back. Look how thin your chin's gotten. Those takeout meals outside can't keep you healthy. Her cheerful voice was so loud it startled the study door on the second floor open with a creak. Ryan stood there against the doorframe in the shadows. The dark indigo loungewear on him gave off a lazy air. The silver buttons at his collar were left undone, 2 of them, and the faint blue veins at his neck pulsed with each swallow. Against the backlight, his skin glowed with the cool clarity of jade, an inexplicable husband-like aura. You have lost weight, he said. Eat more tonight. The sandalwood dining table was crowded with dishes: longjing shrimp, sweet and sour ribs, crab roe tofu. Buddha jumps over the wall. I swallowed hard. Auntie's cooking has improved again. I picked up my chopsticks to take some food. The platinum ring on my finger caught the chandelier light, flashing cold. Clink. The ivory chopsticks knocked against the rim of the bowl. The sound crisp. The man's knuckles, holding his chopsticks, suddenly tensed, pale against the wood. Dark tides surged in his phoenix eyes. That meal felt like an execution banquet. The scrape of the porcelain spoon against the bottom of his bowl was grating. Ryan kept stirring the untouched chicken soup. His eyes lowered. The crystal chandelier gilded his lashes with scattered gold, but the shadows beneath his eyes spread like ink that wouldn't fade. I'm done. Ryan set his chopsticks down, then suddenly lifted his eyes to me, his voice taut as a string pulled to its breaking point. Rachel. The ringtone of my phone burst in like salvation. It was Gloria. I answered as I went upstairs, calling out, baby, out of the corner of my eye. I caught Ryan's hand braced on the table edge, veins bulging. As soon as the door shut, I collapsed onto the bed, laughing. On the other end, Gloria was practically slapping her table. Well, how did he react? I didn't dare look too long. I said, does this trick really work? Isn't it too staged? Gloria chuckled. That's exactly the point. Even if he's 99% sure it's an act, the remaining 1% is enough to drive him crazy. Because when someone really falls for you, the tiniest sliver of what if I lose her is unbearable. So, he's about to break. Chapter 54. Ryan really picked the wrong time to break down. I was just about to sleep. The moment the light went out, the mattress suddenly dipped. The quilt was lifted at the corner, and the smell of alcohol mixed with that familiar woody scent instantly enveloped me. My whole body froze, and my phone slipped onto the bed with a clack. The man pressed up against me from behind, his burning chest searing into my back, making my scalp tingle. His arm locked tight around my waist, muscles tense, not a stitch of clothing. Ryan. I spun around abruptly. Moonlight spilled through the curtains, and his pale skin was tinged with the faint red of drunkenness. His phoenix eyes were misted, like ink dissolving into strong liquor. At his throat, a pink ribbon was tied into a bow, trembling lightly with each swallow, like a gift waiting to be unwrapped. Where did he even learn this? Huh? Where? He lowered his head, brushing my nose, his breath heavy with wine. Rachel. The ribbon bobbed with his swallow, begging to be tugged, to see the marks beneath. I turned my face away with a cold laugh, even to seduce me. You need liquid courage, uncle? His lips fell hot on my earlobe, and he rasped, admitting, I'm afraid you'll push me away. Don't say things like that while you're already hard. I snorted. 3 years ago when you rejected me, were you not afraid then? The arm around my waist tightened suddenly. Ryan buried his face in the crook of my neck, his hair brushing my skin. Ticklish. I was afraid too. Afraid you couldn't tell the difference. Afraid you'd mistake a fledgling's attachment for love. Afraid if you met someone better, you'd regret it, and it would drive me insane. His voice was as soft as falling snow, more afraid that one day you'd wake up and realize I wasn't the flawless Ryan you thought I was. The man who had always been composed in my memory was curled beside me now, shoulder blades jutting, like a fox drenched in rain. So you ran away first? Yes. His head lifted, eyes tinged carmine, but I overestimated myself. You wouldn't understand, Rachel. I am vile, filthy, mad with jealousy. Ryan called my name hoarsely, his phoenix eyes glazed with mist, his long lashes wet and heavy. Even if it means being a dog. I beg you, don't throw me away. So all the obsession and fear beneath his gentle mask, and the restless unwillingness that clawed at me in sleepless nights, they had always been a torment for both of us. I suddenly recalled that night at 18, when he sat in the moonlight, saying you're drunk, his fingers curled tight, a beauty in tears. This time, I couldn't hold back anymore. I told you, I don't have that kind of kink. It's all been forced out of me. My fingertips brushed the corners of his reddened eyes. I laughed softly, uncle, yanking the ribbon. I dragged him close. Nose to nose. You say you'll be a dog, then why aren't you wagging your tail? His gaze darkened, tears still clinging to his lashes, but his lips curved in a tempting smile. Brokenness and desire fused miraculously together. Woof. The tail. He nipped at my earlobe, murmuring, I have one too. Do you want to see me wear it? Wait, what do you mean you actually have one? Chapter 55. Moonlight spilled across the bed. Ryan, I love you. I love you too. I still have so many things left unsaid. No rush. Tomorrow, there's plenty of time.